Your Excellency Aurangzeb, I'm going to start with you. Pakistan in the last few years has seen severe flooding, deadly flooding. How do you plan for the future when you look at public finances when the cost of rebuilding from such devastating disasters is so high?
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, climate change for us is very real. We had floodings back in 22, which, an estimated loss of about $30 billion. We had another flooding this year, and the intensity and the frequency is increasing. And so this year, unfortunately, I think roughly 0.5% of GDP growth is going to be shaved off. So it's a real challenge for an emerging country like Pakistan. I think the important thing is that the path that we have been on in terms of macroeconomic stability has allowed us to build enough fiscal and external buffers to at least ensure that in terms of rescue and relief effort, we can manage through our own resources. Rehabilitation and reconstruction discussion. In fact, yesterday I was at our National Emergency Center. So the good thing is now we have AI-led early warning signal system. So we know month by month for next year, what's going to happen, whether it's droughts, monsoons are going to arrive 2 weeks earlier than this year, which caused the havoc on the flooding side. So we have time to prepare and work on an action plan with a sense of urgency. But to answer your question, it's our own resources are not good enough. So we have, and we can get into detail later on, we have very good multilateral support. I think the private sector actually is green in nature and will help fund us on some of the climate change discussions.
So green bonds are part of the solution for Pakistan. Excellency, impact matters, and regardless of who's in power or the politics around it, I guess essentially one thing that the development world has in common is that public pressure means people want to see whether it's jobs created or schools, housing, healthcare, especially in a globalized, digitally connected world. When it comes to Pakistan, I just wanted to gain a sense. I was quite surprised by one fact I read from the World Resources Institute, which says that for every $1 invested in climate adaptation projects, the return is more than $10.50 over a 10-year period. So the finance seems to make sense. And Her Excellency Toukan spoke about the preference for mitigation rather than adaptation. But still, we're not seeing the funding flows. How much of a challenge is it in Pakistan to balance the development needs of hundreds of millions of people with the need to protect the planet and make that argument?
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. As one of the most climate vulnerable countries, we need to do what we need to do very much to mitigate emissions. But the real challenge, as you mentioned, is adaptation, and therefore the financing related to adaptation. So we have tapped various resources. I would want to mention just a couple. We have entered into a 10-year country partnership framework with the World Bank Group. And this time around, it's less about project funding or project financing. It deals with two of the most existential issues for Pakistan. One is climate change, and it's around resilience and decarbonization, and the other is population. So I know that's not the subject for today, but it is indeed an existential issue for us. So for the next 10 years, we have about roughly $20 billion committed, and at least 1/3 of that to climate change. So that funding and financing is now available. Quite frankly, the ball is in our court, as I keep on saying, in coming up with investable, bankable projects, and with a real sense of urgency so that we can be ahead of the curve. The point that was being made earlier by Her Excellency, I think, is the right one, because we cannot rely, unfortunately, on some of the institutions which have been created, like the Green Climate Fund or the Loss and Damage Fund, on which the discussion actually started in Sharm el-Sheikh, and till COP30, the reality is it's not really been operationalized to the extent that it should be operationalized, and these have turned out to be huge bureaucracies. I say that with a lot of respect. Even before you start, coming and looking for funding, even the accreditation takes forever. So therefore, we had to turn essentially to multilaterals. We have just now received the first tranche under the IMF Climate Resiliency Fund. So that's about $200 million. So we are now beginning to tap external resources in addition to whatever we can make do in our own fiscal budget, which we will. But some of these resources are going to be very important. And as I mentioned, the international capital markets, so that we can move forward in terms of this adaptation finance. Like everyone is saying, the gap is huge. But I take a very pragmatic and practical approach. Let's first do with what we have today, and then start moving from there.
And it's not just the fact that they're bureaucratic, in His Excellency's opinion, but the fact that there's less of that aid coming from certain donor countries, the overseas development aid. If you look at the OECD's figures, particularly from Western nations, the US, obviously that's been well documented. Your nation at the moment is going through a boom in terms of trying to look for partners for FDI. Traditionally, there was a reliance, I think, and granted there have been changes of governments over the last 10, 15 years on the China-Pakistan economic corridor and the billions of dollars that led to in investment. Recently, there's been a warmer relationship with the United States and talk of lots of foreign direct investment coming in from, driven by the relationship from President Trump's administration. A lot of that talk is around critical minerals, extractive resources. How do you ensure that any funding that does come in for these major projects, which is crucially needed for your books and the revenue that you need to generate, will be protecting the climate and used for climate adaptation, at least in the long term, indirectly, if so?
Indeed. Before I answer that question, I just want to say that all the finance ministers who are sitting here, I think this coalition is going to become very, very important, because unless the finance ministers don't take the lead in budgeting, resource allocation, and take it mainstream, the other financing mechanisms will only follow. So it's a lot of responsibility on us to help support, assist our ministers of climate change as we go forward. Now, to the question at hand, with the Trump administration, indeed, the relationship is very strong. And there are two main sectors where the investments, and there is a keenness on the part of US investors. One is the minerals and mining, and the other is AI, blockchain, Web 3.0, overall digital infrastructure. But coming to the minerals and mining, our first project is a copper mine, which is called Reko Diq. It's going to be a real game changer for Pakistan. And as you know, as the world moves towards energy transition, EVs, etc., we feel our Tatian belt in Pakistan is our supply side response to the inevitable shortage that the world is going to face. So for us, it's going to be a real game changer. And the financial close has just happened. IFC, it's a $7 billion project. IFC led the syndication, and the latest entrant there is US Exim, and the overall financial close has come to at about $3.5 billion. So it's done. We are hoping that in 28, when it is the first year of commercial operation, the reason I'm saying it's a game changer, the export from this one mine is going to be 10% of our current export base. So that's the kind of jump, even before we get into scaling it up, not only with the US investors, the Chinese investors, our friends from GCC, here from Saudi Arabia as well. So we think there's going to be a lot of interest and investment coming into this sector, inshallah.
And inshallah, and are you concerned at all about the balancing act between the US and China and the East and West? Many nations around the world are having to face those challenges. Are you concerned, or do you believe that Pakistan is in a good place to deal with that?
I was actually asked the same question at a Doha forum earlier this week. We are very fortunate that we see it very much as an and relationship. China has been a long-standing partner. You mentioned CPEC Phase 1, which was all about the infrastructure, ports, roads, airports, etc. We've just launched CPEC Phase 2.0, which is the monetization of that infrastructure, which is very much B2B rather than G2G. So let's put it this way, so far so good.
And regional collaboration is incredibly important as well with partners in this part of the world,
Indeed.
like the Gulf and the GCC. But thank you so much to all of my panelists.